Alright guys, I know it's been a while since I've done a video, I apologize for that, but this is a little introduction and intro to planning for what will be an adventure coming up here at the end of the month with my father, doing the Wonderland Trail in Washington State. It's a 93-mile trail that goes around the base of Mount Rainier. This is my dad's first real big hiking adventure. He's going to be 67 years old here about a month before we do this. So we're going to kind of take it easy. We're going to take about 9 days to do it. We're heading out there at the end of the month, and we will be taking about 2 weeks to do some sightseeing and things along those lines. But with that being said, I figured I'd just do a little introduction as to what went into the planning of this. Now this all started out on March 15th when you had to go ahead and put your reservation in for your sites prior to going and doing this. You do have to have backcountry reservations. So March 15th through March 30th, I believe it is when you accept applications. It's not like some other places where you put them in and they take the first ones and that's where how you get your slots. Actually, they take a group of them between March 15th and March 30th. And then they just randomly select them. And fortunately enough, we were able to get this. I'll put a little thing up here that I saw on one of the websites that I had that this was year's applications were up 50% from last year. So make sure you get your application if you want to do this early, and make sure you have some flexibility with your dates. We didn't get the exact dates. We start like about a day or two after originally did, so it came out. The next thing that I'd like to talk about is the travel. Obviously, we're coming from out in the East Coast, so we have to fly into Seattle. Now, the big thing getting from Seattle to the trailhead is something you got to kind of pick and choose your own adventure with. The thing that I found probably is the most widely used is just renting a car and then leaving it at your starting point for the duration of your trip. There was one other alternative that I did find in my research is where you could take a train or a bus ride, I think it was a bus ride, to a closer location to the park and then get a cab ride, which I believe at this time is about $90 each way. So since we're going to be out there, we're going to rent a car and we're going to travel out that way. So not very many options to get from Seattle to Longmires, where we're going to be starting our trip at. Guidebooks and maps. There really isn't a whole lot out there, but the resources that I did find are basically www.thewonderlandtrailguide.com. I'll put it down in here somewhere. That's where you can get a lot of information. There's actually a really cool tool on there. You can do your trip planning and you can kind of plug in some different things, like how many days you want to do, and it'll give you some different campsites that you can kind of go through. And it's a really good piece of information as far as planning your trip out there. Another one was at www.williswall.com. This guy must live out in the area, and he's got a great blog. I think he's hiked the trails 25 times or something like that. Does great videos. Just a good source of information as far as a website you can go to. Obviously, there's plenty of YouTube videos out there, which I'll try to get one up once we get ours completed. And the other one is the National Park Service, is www.mps.gov. That basically will give you trail conditions, which I've been looking for. It also gives you a piece of information about how many applications were sent there. Also is where you will get the information to submit your application. The wonderlandtrailguide.com will direct you to that website. Now, another thing that you want to consider when you're planning your trip is the time of year. Now, I'm going a little bit early in the season for this, mainly because of just personal constraints on my scheduling. So what things you want to think about is, are you going to be able to go early in the year, or are you going to want to go later? I think that the best time from what I've seen is probably like around the beginning of September is what it seems like is the ideal time. The bugs aren't too bad. Now, with me going early in the year, some of the things that I have to contend with are bugs. Mosquitoes are supposedly just horrendous this time of year, so that's one thing you have to think about. River crossings. You know, as snow melt, the river crossings are going to be a little bit more prevalent. As far as difficulty to fjord streams at sometimes. Also, being this early in the season, I'm sure that I might run into some situations where there's been some blowdowns, some trail maintenance that hasn't been done yet, some washouts and things like that. Gear selection is going to be a little bit different depending on the time of year you go. Although I am probably going to do another video on my gear selection for the specific trip. You know, that's one thing you can consider. Are you going early enough where you're going to need some kind of cold weather gear, or late enough where you're going to need some cold weather gear? Are you going to be able to modify your essentials to kind of meet your needs? Are you going to need ice axes, crampons, things along those lines? Also, what do you want to see? Are you wanting to see the colors and the flowers that are just coming out in the spring versus towards the end of the year when the flowers are starting to dissipate, but then you have less bugs? And also the snow levels for navigational situations that you're going to come in contact with. We're going pretty early, so we're going to probably run into a lot of snow fields and a lot of lack of, well, probably some difficult navigation over snow fields and things like that. I'm hoping that, based on the topographic map that I have here, which is from the National Geographic Park Service map, it's got topography on it, it's got the Wonderland Trail marked out on that. So those are all some of the things that we've had to take into consideration before doing this trip. With all that being said, it's time to go. So I will do a couple more videos on food preparation that I did, and also for my gear selection as well. Until then.